I've been spending way too much time on my phone recently, endlessly scrolling, just consuming content and melting my brain, wondering why I was getting more depressed. I needed to kick this doom scrolling habit fast. So I added screen limits with an important caveat, adding a password that only my wife knows so I can't click that button that says ignore screen time limit for the day, which left me with no other option but to use my phone less. Now what? Fuck. I didn't think this one through. Well, I recently rewatched the Lord of the Rings movies and I realized they might actually be able to hold a candle to the better trilogy of The Hobbit, which has the coolest character out of the entire franchise, Smaug. So I got an idea. What if I 3D printed a model that I could sit on my desk and be the coolest guy at work? In all reality, what I needed to do was get rid of the cheap dopamine that I was consuming endless amounts of and earn some worse dopamine instead. Well, my biggest problem for getting new ideas and hyperfixations is the fact that I am really good at starting new stuff and really bad at finishing them. So my solution to this was this YouTube channel. Maybe if I have to make videos and be held accountable to an audience, I might actually finish the stuff I start. And unfortunately, so far that's working. First things first, I needed to find an STL file that I liked. I wanted it to be accurate, I wanted it to be detailed, I wanted it to capture the grandiosity of Smaug. Benedict Cumberbatch did a great job.
And none can stop me.
And I found the perfect one, and it was meant for resin printing. We're off to a beautiful start. I wasn't even sure this was gonna work. It's meant for resin printing. I have an FDM printer.
Do you understand?
I took the risk, bought the file, brought it into my slicer, and of course, I got errors saying it was way too detailed. Duh, wonderful. But praise the Lord, there was a solution. You can simplify the model when you bring it in, lowers the triangle count, makes it so the FDM printer can actually print the details that you want, and that's what I did, and it worked! Now it was time to orient the pieces, paint the supports, get it all laid out correctly, set the printer setting. Here are my printer settings. You can take a look if you're interested. The main thing being is that I slowed the printer down, lowered the layer height, and this allowed me to get some really great detail out of the pieces, as you can see here. But of course, I had a grand new idea because I just love to make my life harder. What if I made it light up and smoke? Like in the chest, like when he's about to breathe fire. Because why not? Do I know how to do that? Yeah, no. But I didn't care, so I started trying to find some lights. I found some, I ordered them, they came to my house, I went to test them on some batteries, and fuck it, they don't work. Why? Because they needed 12 volts of electricity. And the smoke. How was I going to make the smoke work? I have no idea. Is it even possible? Honestly, I just thought about giving up at that point, on the smoke at least, and just pursuing the lights, trying to figure out how to make that work. But no, because at this point, I was deeply committed. Not because it was going well, but because if I quit, that would confirm several long-standing fears I have about myself. But alas, there was a saving grace. One of my coworkers who knows absolutely everything there is to know about everything pointed out the fact that I could just buy a micro atomizer. I had no idea what that was, and I just typed it into Google, and of course, voila, here it is. Thanks, Shane. What a jackass. I found the perfect micro atomizer, and it came with a motherboard that had 2 ports on it, and it was powered by USB-C, which means it can now power both the lights and the smoke at the same time. Okay, so now that that was out of the way, it was time to print the pieces. And now that I wanted lights to be inside of it and an atomizer to be inside of it so that it could light up and breathe smoke, I had to make some of the pieces hollow now and transparent. Unfortunately though, I'm not smart enough to know how to model STL files in like a Blender or another 3D model software. So what I ended up doing was making all the adjustments in the slicer settings and then cutting out holes and doing stuff later on, which was super messy. Don't recommend doing it. If you know how to model STL files, just do that instead, because I'm sure that would be way fucking easier. So now because I had to make the pieces of this hollow, a new problem arose because there's a bunch of overhangs. And for internal overhangs, usually infill solves the problem, but because I needed these pieces to be hollow, that wasn't going to be an option. And I'm not smart enough to modify the STL files myself, so what was I going to do? Well, lucky enough for me, there's these things called lightning supports. By playing with the infill percentage, the lightning supports will just jut out from the sides of the model to the spots that you need it the most without taking up a bunch of space like normal infill would do, without blocking the rest of the model and leaving it still mostly hollow. That's all I need. Moving on. So we're off to the races now. Yay. So I printed off all of the pieces, I cleaned them up, I cut holes where I needed to, drilled some holes where I needed to, glued a couple pieces together, tested my lights and my smoke again to make sure it would work, and would you look at this? Yes. And now that I knew it could work, I started putting it together. I used super glue, hot glue, and a little bit of welding with the PLA itself. I ended up running out of hot glue and I was too lazy to go to the store that night, so I just thought I could finish super gluing this together. I only have the wings left to do, and that ended up being the worst decision of my life because the fucking super glue wouldn't harden quick enough and I had to hold it with my hands and try and rubber band the pieces together, but it kept falling apart in my hands and I wanted to crash out, but eventually I got it. It looked like this. And I let it dry overnight. The next morning, I took off the rubber bands. It held together nice and well. There are still a few gaps in the wings, so that's where I used some welding with the PLA to close those gaps. Tried to keep as much of the texture as I possibly could. Ended up looking pretty darn good. And now it was time to paint. So now that I was ready to paint, I gathered all the materials, airbrush, acrylic, some mica powder, and began the process. And it was around this time that I started to slow down a little bit more, and I realized how much this project was actually helping improve my mental health. Instead of coming home and scrolling on my phone for hours and hours on end, achieving nothing, accomplishing nothing, thinking about nothing really, letting the next video come up on my feed, not thinking about what would come next, and not using my brain, it wasn't doing me any good. None of that was doing me any good. But doing this, purposely slowing down, a little bit boring at times, but focusing on it with no other distractions was helping stabilize my mood. I wasn't going through all these constant waves of emotions like I would do when I was scrolling. Fear, judgment, or happiness, hope, and hopelessness. I was at a steady baseline, and it was helping me stay more grounded because it's super easy for me to spiral in my head a lot of the times. And it reminded me of the hours and hours I would spend as a kid just like drawing at the table, doing nothing else but sketching and doing the thing that I loved, with nothing on my mind but the piece of paper that was in front of me. Using my phone less was forcing me to either be bored or to do something productive that I could get a sense of accomplishment from. Even though still getting a sense of accomplishment is hard for me to feel, the times that I did feel it were very much worth it. But after painting, it all came together and it looked really good. I was actually kind of proud of myself for once. Haven't had that feeling in a really long time. Not everything with it is perfect. The wiring is a little bit messy. I mean, I cut out some junk and it does look a little bit bad from the backside. Don't mind that, don't look at that. But it was really cool because I can remove the tail, I can refill the smoke when it needs it, even though the smoke doesn't always come out through the mouth because the airflow isn't as powerful as it needs to be, so I might need to add a fan or something in there if that's even possible. Sometimes it does work though, and it does look really cool. This project didn't fix my life by a long shot, but what it did do was help me slow down and appreciate the small things a lot more, and choose to forego cheap dopamine in order to earn some instead, which was more rewarding to do. And it really helped me break that cycle that was hurting me night after night, whether I realized it was or not. Thank you for watching this whole video. It really helps me to get this channel started. And if you want to see me try more ways of escaping the digital hellhole that we've created for ourselves, be sure to like and subscribe because I will be sharing more of my hyperfixations. The Hobbit movies are better than Lord of the Rings movies. Bye.